from comparative sources. And again, that's Levine's more flowery way of saying what I said a few minutes ago. When Yahweh tells you to do this, this is not going to be you're not going to look at Yahweh and go like, hey, is there wax in my ears? Can you repeat that again? Because that's just kind of weird. No, they're going to know. Moses is going to be familiar with this idea. Jacob is going to be familiar with the idea. Again, this quote, sympathetic magic, that's a term modern anthropologists use. But your God is telling you to fashion an object that your God is going to use to heal your wound or to fix your problem or to deal with the evil thing that is troubling you. And so you have to choose to either believe what your God is telling you, to believe that your God is powerful, or not. Jacob believed and did it. Moses believed and did it. And Yahweh used their obedience, again, they're following the procedures to produce the results he said he would produce. So for an Israelite, this isn't strange. This is, again, something culturally normative, culturally familiar. To us, it looks bizarre. And when you get anthropologists running around saying, oh, this is sympathetic magic, because we're moderns, and again, this isn't our world. You get a lot of people running around and they'll seize that point and say, oh, well, this is, you can't have monotheism with this. You can't have a belief in Yahweh. No, it's exactly the opposite. Yahweh is asserting his power over the situation. And the spiritual lesson, frankly, in Numbers 21 is the God who caused you judgment, the God who caused you pain and harm and death, is the same God who can take it away. He has power over death and power over life. Life and death are in his hands. And so there is, by definition then, if you can fix that in your mind, you'll get the ancillary point here. By definition, you can't appeal to any other power. God sent the serpents to punish you. The only thing that will take them away is God. The only solution to the problem is Yahweh of Israel. There is no higher authority. There is no alternate source of power that can undo what Yahweh did. Only Yahweh can undo what Yahweh does. And so you are dependent on his goodness to relieve the problem. And this is what he's asking you to do. End of story. So the theological point is very consistent with the elevation of Yahweh, what scholars would call biblical monotheism. It's not contrary to it in any regard. But again, you got a lot of Fruit Loops running around on the internet that take a story like this, and again, the terms that anthropologists use, and they rip it out of context to argue whatever flaky point it is that they want to argue, from the passage. And it's just not legitimate. It's not good scholarship. I think that's probably the most succinct way to put it. Now, when Jesus, references this, I think the associations are quite plain. If you don't have the Genesis 3 serpent floating around in your head, there's no problem. And you shouldn't have the Genesis 3 serpent floating around in your head because, again, there's no indication the Israelites had ever even heard the story, and there's no links in Numbers 21 back to Genesis 3. Okay, there's no sense of divine evil beings here. They're just snakes. That's what they are. And God, again, provides the solution. But when Jesus says, hey, just like Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, that anyone who looked upon it was cured. And that was the power of God that was undoing the problem of death, because they were going to die from the bites if they weren't treated. So God commands Moses to make this serpent. God says, I will undo this thing that no one else can undo. No God, no deity, no person can deal with. I will deal with it. If you build the bronze serpent, lift it up, and tell the people, look at it when you're bit, you will be healed. And Jesus says, that's just like what God's going to do here. We have this problem that the cross rectifies, and no other thing but the cross can rectify it. This problem of death, this problem of human mortality. So the Son of Man must be lifted up. And again, I think it's not a totally point blank reference to the cross, but again, if as you're reading the Gospels, you know what he's talking about here: his own self-sacrifice on the cross. And he's saying, look, this is the solution. Look upon it and believe. If you don't turn to it in faith and believe, you're going to die. Okay, you will inherit death. So the analogy is I think, a pretty powerful one. But it's confusing to a lot of people in our day because we have Genesis 3 floating around in our heads and we're wondering, what in the world's going on? Well, nothing's going on. Okay, you don't import things, don't throw things into the blender that the Israelites didn't have in the blender and the writer didn't have in the blender. You don't just get to throw other passages in the blender and say, "Oh, that looks messy now." Well, yeah, it does because you just messed it up. So again, we need to be thinking more about the immediate and the larger context of what the writer and what the Israelites had in mind. Now, I should say